We refer to him as the unknown subject or unsub. We all know how an unsub feels. The unidentified subject.
The second unsub.
Unsub set that one manually to the unsub.
The unsub is done.
The unsub.
So what does that tell you about our unsub?
I'm not saying he's the unsub.
Then there's our unsub.
If he doesn't know the unsub, well, the unsub takes pride in
The unsub.
First story on this unsub. The unsub brought his weapons with him.
The unsub. The unsub knows.
You're the unsub.
Could have been the unsub stressor.
The unsub. The unsubs themselves.
But our unsub
There's the unsub. The unsub.
The unsub. But the unsub.
The unsub.
McCarty's the unsub. The unsub. Playing the unsub.
By making him the unsub.
How did the unsub...
Our unsub. I'm the unsub.
What do we know about the unsub based on the two bodies?
Our unsub is male.
Was the unsub laying in wait for
Unsub? Unknown subject.
More than one unsub.
Single unsub could too.
The unsub has to be from this area.
This type of unsub can't resist it. We profiled the unsub.
So we got some names of unsub.
All the organs the unsub's taken.
Unsub could have been hunting. The unknown subject in this case is...
We do know enough about this unsub.
The unsub's in here somewhere.
Our unsub is a solitary individual. We'll find our unsub.
The unsub usually disposes of these accomplices.
The unsub.
We think that this unsub is striking out,
She could be the unsub.
She don't fit the profile of the unsub.
and when the unsub finished using her to further his attack, he...
So what does that tell us about the unsub?
If the unsub is a chemist,
I think there's a good chance the unsub worked there too.
The unsub broke off the handle.
We've never had an unsub there.
the unsub might blindfold him initially.
I've been blindfolded when he drove the unsub. Guess the unsub feels remorse.
The unsub broke in through the front window and...
It's possible our unsub is sort of
This particular unsub presents a mixed profile.
The fact that the unsub shoots his victims first.
an unsub's signature. An unsub kills to satisfy an inner need.
This particular unsub, whatever the unsub's job,
Or maybe the unsub even made himself known.
that's why the unsub stabs the ears. Why did your unsub
Between the girl and the unsub,
So we know this unsub can blend in, or our unsub.
get to finding the unsub.
With this unsub,
Our unsub.
The unsub is not.
It looks like he could be the unsub.
We think Maggie's the unsub.
Why'd the unsub choose this victim?
He's not really an unsub.
To profile the unsub up close. This unsub long ago accepted the reality that life means nothing to this unsub.
the unsub killed Giles.
If he's in the unsub, he probably talked to him.
He's just another unsub.
This could be the unsub, guys.
Unsub used a disposable cell.
The unsub.
Unsub's extremely organized. Brought the unsub out into the opening.
Mom, the unsub that we're looking for,
As the unsub believes it's all real.
Randall Garner, our unsub.
The unsub knows that we're onto him.
Only our unsub doesn't know it yet. It believes the unsub himself.
i.e. the unsub in the first 3 robberies and the unsub in the last robbery.
In the last robbery, we're dealing with a different unsub?
An unsub who was somehow able to erase tape.
An unsub who may have possibly had inside help.
We're only dealing with one unsub.
Makes this unsub unique.
This unsub went to jail between the...
What makes this unsub unique?
The unsub got her pregnant.
The unsub fraternity.
The unsub knew Shelley Norvell was...
Yeah, the unsub feels a connection with them.
The unsub's mine, they've consented.
Not everyone's an unsub.
This unsub seems to be taking pleasure from...
Suggests the unsub is getting more brazen.
Referring to this unsub as he.
The unsub didn't use a gun.
The unsub found Finnegan's corpse, and so the unsub ate everything. We just found our unsub. We think the unsub has something planned.
The unsub is someone from this community.
This unsub, or unknown subject, is... The unsub resides in Seattle.
This unsub is male.
Unsub says we're going to be busy.
Nathan Harris is in our unsub.
We know our unsub is a sexual sadist.
And the unsub may still visit the place of the crime. You said the unsub might try to inject himself.
Find the real unsub.
Unsub crossing state lines.
Maybe that's why the unsub dumps the bodies here.
This unsub has extensive anatomical knowledge.
It appears this unsub is
They
traveling.
were killed by the same unsub.
It's essential for this unsub.
It almost seems like the unsub is one of the unsubs called them.
Unsubs with a cause are never good.
Well, unsub 1, the second unsub.
It's not uncommon for an unsub. These unsubs believe
Unsubs?
unknown subjects.
This unsub was good.
Now, assuming unsub 1,
Unsub suffering from a psychopathy.
maybe unsub 1.
Unsub number 1. A third unsub?
Did the unsubs bring it with them? What did the other unsub...
The unsubs are right about one thing. Unsub 1 called the police before.
There was only one unsub this time?
We may have one unsub.
Vice Henkel's the unsub.
Why would the unsub use...
So the unsub shot Ken first. She had a date with the unsub. I'm confident the unsub's from this county.
Sounds like the same unsub to me. The higher the intelligence of the unsub.
That the unsub may be connected.
We know the unsub has a vehicle.
The key to this unsub's psychology...
The unsub's ritual was
locations where the unsub might approach young girls.
Where the unsub saw her
Apparent interaction between the unsub and the victim's
unsub?
If he had written the unsub's name...
Is that the letter from the unsub?
And the unsub wants us to think that...
This unsub suffers from low self-esteem, but
to this unsub.
The unsub we're looking for is...
This unsub sounds oddly apologetic.
Okay, so I'm the unsub. She saw the unsub.
The unsub we're looking for, it's...
And the unsub held the same misconception. The unsub joined the EDF
Our unsub's profiled.
to finding the unsub.
So we know Abby's not the unsub.
Chances are the unsub was at Abby's house.
The unsub didn't go into a house.
Unsub lashes out immediately.
It could be an unsub. This type of unsub.
Behavior this unsub displays. Ultimately, this type of unsub,
The unsub probably had...
Who thinks they'd seen the unsub?
The unsub were out here.
He's not the unsub.
On the relationship the unsub has left.
Put some pressure on the unsub?
The unsubs.
the unsub kills the victim that
If the unsub's part of campus life.
This unsub has killed 3 women and
This unsub displays a great amount of anger. This unsub chose a closed community on purpose.
First unsub showed remorse.
there's nothing to suggest that the unsub is ever...
This unsub is abducting women from...
The skill the unsub exhibits.
The unsub is dumping his victims,
Most unsubs keep their area of control.
which means that the unsub probably lives in Wauwatosa. No, the unsub.
It means it's more about the unsub making a point.
This is the sickest way the unsub knows to
It
do it.
would be visible to people around the unsub.
We're trying to zero in on the unsub.
And make it hard to tell if the unsub is male or female.
As soon as the unsub knows that,
But you think the unsub chooses them
you found the unsub's dump site.
Suggest multiple unsubs.
2 unsubs.
The unsubs are targeting their victims at random.
These unsubs are using cats.
So we believe our unsubs graduated from robbery.
Could be that the unsub...
It suggests the unsub didn't want them found.
What if it was Enid or the unsub?
And what this unsub does,
But to this kind of unsub,
An unsub is still an unsub with an unsub.
the unsub,
Unsub like this.
where the unsub could reside. Unsub gets into the card.
Unsub was likely in a mental institution.
An unsub in a psychotic break. Multiple unsubs in violent psychotic breaks. Could be the unsub was initially just an unsub in a psychotic rage.
Please tell me the unsub is...
Sometimes what an unsub does that.
it's the first unsub I've worked.
Every unsub is ill and
Sounds familiar. Unsub?
Our unsub's pushing 60.
between the victim and the unsub.
So 2 unsubs.
This is one of our unsubs.
But we can't call him the unsub forever.
One very smart unsub.
That an unsub exists.
Then this unsub's probably already aware that we're wrong.
Look, if this unsub does exist, it means this unsub's not looking. We got ourselves an unsub.
Could be what started our unsub on.
If the unsub's father really taught...
Wish all our unsubs would just...
Gives the unsub all the leverage.
The unsub watched them long enough to know.
I think these guys knew the unsub.
We think the unsub is targeting these guys,
Meeting the same unsub.
them vulnerable to the unsub. This unsub is charming.
The unsub may be struggling with his own sexuality.
The unsub was targeting gay males.
So the unsub either ditch. The unsub lives in their skin.
The unsub can't follow his pattern.
The unsub may take another life in the next...
Threaten the unsub with getting caught.
He might be our unsub. Until the unsub's already leaving the scene.
Has the unsub tried to make contact?
This unsub's organized.
We've got more than one unsub.
We have more than one unsub?
These unsubs.
Just like this unsub.
We believe our unsubs. We're just saying the unsubs.
Same kind of unsub.
If the dominant unsub has...
These unsubs are organized. These unsubs are more disciplined than that. We have multiple unsubs.
That's the unsub.
This is the unsub Morgan chasing with Sam and the other dead unsub.
Okay, so this unsub's...
I think we've got this unsub all wrong.
Did the same thing to our unsub.
Our unsub is a different type.
The unsub's disorganized behavior.
The unsub, not our unsub.
The unsub wasn't very successful. If the unsub finds out we're here, it was our unsub.
Our unsub's using brutal physical force and...
Shelbyville police talked to our unsub.
It's the same unsub?
A lot of what the unsub saw.
That this unsub is not getting around.
The unsub's killed in 3 other small towns.
Same route as our unsub. Same time as our unsub. Same time as our unsub as well.
Unsub could see this death as merciful.
Unsub called each of the families.
Unsub who shows remorse and...
Except there were no traces of the unsub's sweat.
There's a good chance the unsub will.
This unsub dumped his last body for...
Odds are we'll catch the unsub when... A male unsub would have...
From the unsub to the victim. Why do you think this is the same unsub?
It's the same unsub.
So if the unsub changed victimology,
How does our unsub go from loser of the year to...
Could the unsub...
one for the unsub who killed him for the unsub who goes to clubs.
Them as separate unsubs.
Match between the unsub and the prostitute.
She got the best look at the unsub.
Should prepare a press release about the unsub.
This unsub had a long way to climb.
From a self-assured unsub who... An unsub who kills prostitutes is...
How would the unsub alter his signature and put... Anyone see the unsub?
Classes the unsub might have taken. We need...
Both times the unsub has gone to a club, he's...
He has in common with our unsub.
Unsub took my class.
I think the unsub's using one of his routines.
Our unsub is a confident alpha male.
What made the unsub change his victimology?
This unsub...
I cannot figure out what the unsub could have... Our unsub knew Vanessa Holt.
It definitely sounds like the unsub was here.
The unsub's kidnapped another victim. That Vanessa Holden might know the unsub. Clearly our unsub was more complicated than...
This is an unsub with something to prove.
Our unsub blows past...
The unsub planned ahead.
The unsub might have had a problem with...
The unsub knew they'd be wearing body. Forcing the unsub to take him.
The unsub's face...
This is not our unsub.
The unsub would take the fall.
Yeah, that matches the same MO as our unsub.
The unsub's feeling of superiority
The unsub to try to prove him.
This unsub will be following the
and issuing the unsub a challenge. The unsub's hunting ground.
This type of unsub
Is all our unsub thinks about. This is an unsub suffering a
This unsub is delusional.
You said the unsub was gonna...
The unsub's head starting.
I'm the unsub.
looking at multiple unsubs. two unsubs change the dynamics.
Like our unsubs.
The unsubs we're looking for are a family.
The unsubs actually had to go out of their way.
Little girl is now one of our unsubs.
These unsubs.
Unsubs simply twisted and distorted. These unsubs are guided.
Our unsub is a white male.
Believe the unsub is a temp
And our unsubs maturate.
The unsub probably turned it off.
and the way this unsub is accustomed to living.
It's even the same unsub.
So if it is the same unsub,
This unsub's first murder, how do we know the unsub didn't commit more murders in
in the unsub's operating zone,
So now imagine this unsubs.
or the unsub.
It's not the unsub you need to worry about.
This unsub already knows.
Maybe our unsub did at the unsub frequency.
We might have an unsub. Apprentice, how does an unsub induce?
Unsub? For this unsub, it's a think unsub.
The unsub is most likely.
And if our unsub stuck around, maybe
Resemble the unsub's MO?
the unsub may have done his
You know,
practice.
the unsub could have...
Our unsub in this guy.
Or this unsub one.
The unsub is chosen local.
Tells us that the unsub is a...
They also gave the unsub a
Fire captain said the unsub, or the unsub kept changing his seat.
There's a good chance one of them is the unsub, but
We suspect the
could help us determine how the unsub met.
Means the unsub...
Your unsubs have how to make an unsub manual.
If Adam isn't our unsub,
What if our unsub I think the unsub surfaced.
This unsub knows his neighborhood. Our unsub's taste is more.
It's a clue about the unsub.
the unsub would have to be real.
The unsub went out.
Directly at the unsub, but neither...
The unsub may be out of his comfort zone.
Here comes the unsub. Now the unsub's in the house. Face to face with the unsub. Talk.
Morgan thinks the unsub spraying for the unsub is a stressor.
Why didn't the unsub...
This unsub has extreme upset.
The unsub's 10.
Our unsub is male.
If the unsub sees himself as fit...
Their only connection is the unsub there.
Unsub knew where he was.
The unsub is targeting something that kept the unsub from attacking.
The unsub is disabled.
The description of the unsub's truck or
We believe the unsub facilities where the unsub may cross paths with the unsub himself.
Probably where the unsub released the attack. Symbolic for the unsub. Me and to our unsub.
Do whatever you can to catch the unsub. This unsub kills.
Having to do with our unsub?
We believe this unsub gets... This unsub is extremely smart. Prostitute will get into a car with an unsub, but he's our unsub.
Could be the unsub. According to Mason, he's the unsub.
These are the unsub's coverall.
The unsub is outside.
That and the unsub is watching. The unsub sees us evacuate early.
I think he's our unsub. What if the unsub was trapped?
Trapped mutilation means to the unsub.
the unsub wants us to know. The unsub has access to
The unsubs believe... Unsubs?
unknown subjects. Unsub A we're calling the planner. Unsub A is in his late 50s or 60s.
Met unsub B, the enforcer with... How many unsubs are you thinking?
See if these unsubs are coordinating.
How these unsubs...
It's likely these unsubs don't...
Challenge from the unsubs. We believe that the unsubs wear gloves.
But if the unsubs work in this area...
And the amount of control these unsubs exert, we believe that these unsubs are large. Or
Nice to see if the unsubs communicate electronically.
Not in the unsub's usual comfort.
it's not like these unsubs are sure. I think our unsubs are in there
Because the unsubs we're looking for are older.
the unsubs are going to respond. These unsubs are going to react.
The unsubs aren't going to like it.
None of those kids are the unsub.
The unsubs know about
The unsubs are extremely...
Unsubs build to...
Are we sure this is the same unsub?
The unsub killed her.
This unsub isn't just
This unsub is too skilled.
where the unsub's finding them.
About the unsub, you know, at the very...
The unsub might have left DNA. The unsub has gotten all of his...
This unsub could still be
It's
sus.
about what the unsub is doing. Lead to the unsub.
So, this unsub had the...
Nothing about this unsub's behavior. The unsubs that we are looking for...
The unsubs hid their tracks. Let's assume the unsub, or
Well, this unsub can't cope.
perhaps the unsub knew him.
The unsub didn't just stumble on it.
We believe that our unsub may have known. Our unsub kills at night.
Unsubs collecting sets of...
So is this unsub.
Is that this unsub has a very strong desire.
Record of this unsub as an adolescent.
This unsub is very, very sick.
Probably isn't our unsub. Just
Remember, if he is the unsub,
Unsub holds a
The
gun,
unsub finds him and
the unsub only took what he can carry, which
the
means
unsub walked right in.
This unsub's copying...
but not this unsub.
the unsub spent most of his...
It was done for the unsub.
This unsub is driven by some other...
The unsub, something is related to the unsub's past, which would indicate the unsub experience.
Prentice thinks the unsub might be a woman.
Reminiscent of the ones the unsubs created were... So if the girls represent the unsub,
This unsub is armed and...
The unsub's next victim.
Need to figure out where this unsub is meet before this unsub will strike again.
We believe our unsub.
believe that our unsub is doing...
she had sex with the unsub.
Somewhere where she met the unsub.
So how did the unsub miss him?
The unsub stabbed Erica Silverman.
The unsub lives somewhere in...
That our unsub recently experienced. Assumed that because our unsub could...
The unsub gave them a bad...
The care this unsub shows these...
Kind of exactly like the unsub whipped him up.
The unsub might have had. The unsub's already taken another victim.
We think the unsub is...
I'm assuming the unsub would have... Now, we know this unsub is stuck...
So death isn't this unsub's...
Could be how our unsub is...
The unsub we're looking for is a woman.
But this unsub's in...
Probably when the unsub was prepubescent.
Sight is our only way to track the unsub.
We believe the unsub responsible.
That's our unsub.
It's the unsub's website.
It's got to be the unsub's number. The unsub and the vicar.
The unsub got that close to... The unsub channels...
This unsub is a white collar.
We can find the unsub. That's how the unsub found his victim.
Anybody knows the unsub?
The unsub. I mean, an unsub this bold could...
She got the best look at the unsub, so we determine where the unsub will strike next.
When the unsub walked in, but not the unsub.
This unsub isn't psychotic and...
We suggest that you think of this unsub,
While this unsub will never set an act...
Our unsub fits that model.
And this unsub...
which may distract the unsub. Our goals and not the unsubs.
The unsub changed his clothes.
He was the unsub. The unsub is still here.
I have particular interest to the unsub. Back on the unsub.
Up till now, the unsub's been...
How would the unsub react? The unsub can't ignore that.
If this draws the unsub to Meg.
Well, if the unsub was going to... But the unsub doesn't know that.
If Amy is still with the unsub.
The unsub was slight.
The unsubs are watching. As the unsub has her face buried. It took 3 unsubs to pull this off.
The unsubs.
These unsubs were questioned before.
This point to our unsub.
This unsub doesn't care.
They're strangled by the same unsub.
This is the same unsub.
So this unsub's choosing easy targets. So
Gotta be personal for the unsub.
only let the unsub shoot him.
I think the unsub's been locked.
This unsub has a prison record.
We profiled that the unsub makes the unsub might be local.
The unsub hunts along the U.
From the way the unsub is
The
acting,
unsub would be someone close to the
we
indictment.
didn't think he was the unsub.
I think the unsub may be Deputy Boyd.
Deputy Boyd is our unsub. The
Unsub turned himself into the police.
We know that the unsub...
A 50-year-old unsub doesn't stay.
unsub wants them found sooner than later.
Unsub grazed him twice and then hit
The unsub knew that. He could
Right towards the unsub. You
suggests the unsub has lived...
You said the unsub has abandonment issues.
He knows who the unsub is.
Your unsub's a teenage boy.
the unsub privacy.
You could easily see how the unsub was doing it.
The unsub posted.
So this unsub friends his victim.
This is how the unsub is finding.
This unsub is a creepy admin, and in this case, the unsub
And this unsub craves that same.
This unsub is an expert.
Unsubs like this are...
So if you find this unsub,
The unsub.
And they're gonna give up the unsub. All right, so this unsub accelerated his timetable.
One of them knows the unsub.
The unsub took his license. I can't tell you who the unsub is pretending to be. I'll get you the unsub.
you said the unsub liked your...
So the unsub cut the power.
This unsub said practice.
This unsub has been doing it forever. It appears our unsub started that.
The unsub made him watch from the closet.
The unsub had Spicer's sister and daughter.
The unsub attacked Spicer. If the unsub wants to hurt Spicer,
The unsub and Spicer.
This unsub raped the aunt.
All right, what we have is an unsub in.
But this unsub doesn't.
That the unsub listens to news radio. Clearly, this unsub
It
doesn't...
wasn't one unsub, but 2 unsubs of their own.
2 unsubs? The unsubs fit into the community.
These unsubs aren't just trying to cop.
And there are things that this unsub is doing. These unsubs or unknown subjects are.
The unsub could also be...
The unsub gets sexual gratification.
Met the unsub before.
The unsub's back here.
Isn't specific to this unsub, but what if
That's how the unsub sees himself.
The unsub took the heart waste.
This unsub is impotent, but
Which our unsub would.
forced the unsub to shoot her.
Okay, you're the unsub. Then she comes on to the unsub?
The unsub's fantasy was...
this unsub is an emasculated...
This unsub is what we call decompensating.
In this case, the unsub's ritualized fame.
The unsub came from
The unsub could have easily shot him.
The unsub!
The unsub is the father.
If the unsub did kill someone,
We think the unsub was focused on.
the unsub repeats. The unsub needs 10 or 15 minutes.
We are labeling this unsub a...
If the unsub's parents...
the unsub like to...
This unsub is killing only these.
This unsub doesn't leave anything to chance.
Because the unsub didn't realize...
The unsub's probably picked crowded.
We might be able to spot the unsubs before we're dealing with more than 2 unsubs.
If there's a third unsub, we 2 unsubs working toward a common goal.
Only one unsub.
This might be one of our unsubs.
At least one of the unsubs is.
By sending in the photo of the unsub's handiwork,
One specific to the unsub.
We probably already interviewed the unsub.
You have interviewed the unsub.
Somehow in the unsub's mind,
This isn't about the unsub. It's...
The unsub could have left...
unsub may have taken...
It looks like the unsub is part. We have an unsub who manages to
I've
live.
seen our unsub.
That would attract this unsub.
The unsub came through the garage.
The unsub won't be able to control. The unsub will displace something that he.
The unsub's able to get through the entire... The unsub used the garage.
The unsub's killed 2 nights in a row.
The unsub's comfort zone.
He'd just be part of the unsub's signature.
And yet the unsub shot him
The
from.
unsub chose not to use a gun.
Is the unsub sacrificing the...
only an inexperienced unsub. The unsub
Victims know the unsub.
This unsub success is making...
in the unsub's MO.
We believe that our unsub is a. And it's the unsub signature.
The unsubs are becoming more and more...
Tried to have sex with one of our unsubs.
What if the unsubs, at least one of the unsubs...
The trouble is these unsubs already...
Our unsubs are killing Sir.
Our unsub's attended and...
The unsub wants his victims to.
forcing our unsub back.
clean, like the unsub knew what he was...
The only area the unsub has...
Because of the type of unsub we're dealing
We're
with.
looking for a very intelligent unsub.
This type of unsub will, after an unsub is caught,
And if the unsub is signaling this...
If the unsub met them on campus, he...
I found out a lot about an unsub by where they...
with an unsub this obsessed,
Think from the perspective of a female unsub.
the unsub moved in with them.
Maybe the unsub works at the hospital?
This unsub likes familiar places.
Would Sammy be our unsub?
The unsub should have done his research.
But the unsub shoots Charlie because
Why does the unsub take the.
the unsub must have known the family well.
Do you think the unsub was here?
Maybe the unsub thinks he can get...
If the unsub has what it...
No sign of the unsub.
The unsub is probably holding...
All right, so if this unsub had what drove the unsub into action,
This unsub didn't start with.
our unsub is definitely...
Figure out where Sam met the unsub. The time that he met the unsub. I'm right, the unsub is... He's our unsub.
Ian Doyle is our unsub.
Unsubs become more capable.
Unsubs prefer to stay in an area that they know what it is that the unsub lives or works nearby.
The unsubs either live or work.
These unsubs like the feeling of kill.
Maybe one unsub can...
Another unsub hits him with a punch. The unsub's most likely...
So a group of unsubs would have...
What if we're looking for a single unsub?
Well, then you must have heard the unsub because...
I believe our unsub is a white man. We think this unsub is hypervigilant.
Something happened to our unsub and...
Our unsub is probably...
Our unsub spends...
Our unsub's hallucinations aren't... The clerk said the unsub was buying...
Why would the unsub lie down
The
now?
unsub's husband or boy...
Possible the unsub was an abusive emotional... Emotional decisions drive an unsub.
Match the physical description of our unsub.
If Shelley Chamberlain is our unsub,
Know that the unsub was waiting for
in movies, unsubs are called villains.
Well, the unsub definitely has a
It's the crimes, and the unsub uses
Our unsub has a type.
this kind of unsub.
a lot of places for the unsub to hide out.
Knowledge on the part of the unsub.
Well, the unsub must have known that.
Where she made contact with the unsub. The unsub stalks his victim.
The unsub figured to have more time.
You think the unsub fed the...
What kind of an unsub stuff?
Just take a picture of the unsub. This unsub strikes in...
Our unsub is developing.
Someone whom the unsub think.
Because the unsub shows signs, the unsub may be using something that the unsub could use to...
The unsub hacked into the Jenkins.
The unsub actually fed.
Cause the unsub to change.
The unsub's always been trouble.
The unsub has a torture chamber in.
So the unsub most likely holds the.
If the unsub knew Jane...
Our unsub must be a master.
It's not unusual for an unsub to manipulate his victim.
The unsub does have a type.
But it doesn't fit the unsub's action.
Our unsub's attempting to frame tell.
Our unsub must have known.
The unsub will do whatever he needs
Through the unsub's eyes.
Luck uncovers an unsub's graveyard.
Oh, the unsub killed his recent.
So the unsub was smart enough to wait for the unsub to screw up.
The unsub doesn't know.
The unsub's responsible. Information about the unsub's motive.
The unsub dictates the message.
How our unsub finds his victim.
The unsub we're looking for is...
But to this unsub.
Based on this unsub's level of...
First person to abandon the unsub.
So the unsub picks that the unsub might be finding his victim.
From point A to point unsub.
You know, if the unsub's abducted, an unsub this experience wouldn't display that.
I don't think the unsub did. And the unsub met him, they were starting over. The unsub had to punish him for that.
The unsub would take him.
How do we know the unsub has an art?
The unsub's gonna get angry. Seer narrowed the unsub's history while the unsub worked the...
Unsub depot.
This is not a traditional unsub.
I am not some unsub.
Why would the unsubs kill their...
Unsub's hands must be...
What would these unsubs do?
Perhaps the unsub's
We
disfigured.
give the unsub access.
Maybe our unsub's a little bit like the unsub most likely uses.
Our unsub.
We believe the unsub or unknown subject that
Our
we're...
unsub could possibly work.
The woman had toward the unsub at some point.
The unsub's fixate.
Causes the unsub to go after.
Close to the unsub to make mental health centers in the unsub's...
Maybe she knew the unsub.
So where's the unsub?
There's only one unsub,
What was the unsub looking for?
The unsub's looking for.
which means the unsub made it all the way.
Where the unsub is there.
Feels like the unsub wants to...
Bothers me about this unsub. This unsub could have done this.
This unsub has more bomb.
The unsub has to be.
Well, Slade's the unsub copied. How did the unsub? But this unsub was the... Why would the unsub was... He's not the unsub.
The unsub isn't the part.
The unsub's vendetta has
But
nothing.
the unsub was already gone. The unsub must be part of that mysteries with the unsubs. Spence said the unsub would have.
This unsub...
You sure the unsub has it?
This unsub displayed it.
And the unsub didn't develop his...
But this unsub's so young.
That's why the unsub killed him.
The unsub must have been staking out the...
How did the unsub get...
Our unsub had personal... The unsub's endgame is...
The unsub must have.
The unsub beat us here. What
The unsub's keeping the.
Rescued the unsub.
said the unsub had dragged...
Which means if the unsub.
Could be looking at an unsub who gets...
Angeles National Unsub Dump Site.
So the unsub knew that his...
Give the unsub his relief.
Unsub blends in with the
The unsub may have had...
This unsub wanted.
These unsubs get off. The unsub wasn't able to.
Maybe the unsub was.
Turns out the unsub drowns. Unsub is sick.
The unsub or unknown subject were looking...
This unsub is a sadist.
The unsub is cancer. An unsub was a god comp.
Why the unsub is doing this.
To our unsub's MO to be.
But this unsub has had a similar experience.
Same thing the unsub did.
See, our unsub's got two...
Unsub's been getting colder.
The unsub.
The unsub, he's got a hell of a.
Give the unsub the private...
This unsub is using...
The unsub is responsible for... The unsub definitely...
Okay, so the unsub either. Maybe the unsub's key.
Find the unsub.
That this unsub was
So
low.
will the unsub.
The vast majority of unsubs, I think I know what this unsub made.
An unsub's fantasy.
Or the unsub hasn't acquired it yet. It's
Our unsub did.
gotta be our unsub.
Is this unsub won't stop.
The unsub might have been a high risk.
The unsub isn't just trying to...
Be on the lookout for the unsub's art.
The unsub won't actually... Common for unsubs to reach out and...
Should assume that the same unsub was... The unsub wrote it?
She leaves, but the unsub stays.
Description on the unsub.
The unsub stalked.
And it will narrow down the unsub's comfort zone. The unsub lives somewhere within the...
We believed our unsub to be a...
We believe the unsub is more...
Recently, the unsub kept.
And the unsub knew that, and he...
Possible the unsub did...
This means the unsub is that much more...
Our unsub has to be pretty.
The unsub blitz attacks.
Weighing on the unsub.
The unsub knew them.
After killing our unsub is...
I believe our unsub is probably.
Tony is the unsub. The unsub could be one of. Is the unsub with her?
Has the unsub made any contact?
Found a cipher from the unsub.
The unsub's not here.
The unsub, so he could. How would the unsub know? Well, maybe the unsub doesn't.
The unsub chose the.
The unsub could still hold...
Dropping the unsub off?
The unsub kidnapped some.
It's obvious this unsub is off. Unsub does is accidental. The unsub is drugged. The unsub stalked her from the back.
The unsub brought his own, so the unsub just happened.
Is the unsub's signature. Are you sure it's our unsub?
I think there are two unsubs.
The original unsub in order
So the unsub placed that. Which unsub?
If this was a robbery, the unsub must have... You know, maybe the unsub wasn't either.
Our unsub lit it
Our unsub is physically fit.
to our unsub signature.
Not only is this unsub a killer,
The unsub wouldn't have naturally.
The unsub's getting generous.
The unsub is still.
or it was a gift from the unsub,
So the unsub system.
Maybe the unsub left.
What if this unsub is doing...
on which a lot of unsubs thrive.
The unsub feels emasculated.
The unsub dragged.
Why is the unsub different?
Maybe the unsub hit.
The unsub probably was connecting the unsub and the victim.
How skilled would our unsub need to be?
This unsub's going to great lengths to
The
cover...
unsub suffered a loss.
This unsub selects.
The unsub most likely.
We believe that our unsub's comfort... The unsub couldn't have known his
If the unsub's a bartender,
This is the woman that broke the unsub's heart. The unsub didn't shoot.
Right, all of the unsub's victims.
maybe he stumbled on the unsub.
Unsub.
The unsub has been staging.
Our unsub may be.
This unsub is dedicated.
So what if our unsub is nothing? If our unsub's more like his father?
Description of the unsub? There's no way the unsub could have been.
The description of the unsub's vehicle.
It's rare for an unsub who
Why wouldn't the unsub take?
Or multiple unsubs.
the unsubs have
The
continued.
unsub's in a wheelchair.
The unsub was injured.
Or our unsub is using.
And this was the only way our unsub.
Well, the unsub probably said the unsub was looking for this unsub sure is patient.
Where they met the unsub.
Our unsub's following. The unsub might be a woman.
The unsub must have some.
The unsub we're looking for is
We believe our unsub is
Unsub may also fantasize.
Our unsub to do something.
So that our unsub is frustrated.
APB and our unsub. Our unsub.
Oh, we think the unsub. If he's our unsub's baby. Or the unsub could have.
But the unsub has a head start.
was likely enraged the unsub.
No, the unsub was.
This unsub is too.
Everything that this unsub does
You know, J.B. Allen's our unsub. He's
As the unsub transported.
And the unsub could be someone
is somehow very important to this unsub.
This unsub went through a lot of. The unsub knows this.
Where the unsub left his mark.
the unsub's not the. Or an unsub with a young.
Eternal desire of the unsub.
To the theater that the unsub.
The unsub could have approached.
We're looking for an unsub who would.
This unsub tortured his victim.
This unsub's exact age is different.
This unsub is a female or.
Most importantly, this unsub is
The unsub didn't sub.
Our unsub is doing.
That fisherman unsub.
This new unsub is a cop.
Maybe the unsub took them. The unsub cut her hair.
The unsub cut her hair too.
The unsub's deviating.
Could be from our unsub.
We thought the unsub was trying
Are unattainable to this unsub.
The unsub strikes from.
The unsub left the door.
This unsub has chosen more.
If the unsub really wanted to thumb.
Prentice, the unsub must have broke.
The unsub must have.
If our unsub's blue.
I mean, even the unsub has to.
Into the unsub's design.
Well, Garrett and the unsub.
Here in case the unsub show.
The unsub's in love with her.
That make
How did the unsub know?
The unsub knew she. Unknown subject or unsub. This unsub's entire.
Okay, so the unsub's
that or the unsub is psych.
Tells us about the unsub.
The unsub may be learned. And the unsub.
Our unsub got spooked.
Might be able to keep the unsub from fleeing. We got another hit on the unsub. This
Identifying characteristics of the unsub.
I think the unsub might.
I think the male unsubs might even
A sketch of the unsubs
Unless you can subdue the unsubs.
might be why the female unsub is.
a fourth unsub.
The female unsub disappeared.
The unsub's behavior and
The
the
unsubs were in an alley.
So, our unsub. The unsub made Ridgeway.
The unsub needs to.
So our unsub's a friend or
Our unsub may claim another victim soon.
Did the unsub call
The
the.
unsub's ruse was.
Well, our unsub is
So the unsub drags more.
met the unsub in a park.
But either way, our unsub is highly.
So the unsub was scared.
Where we're looking at two unsubs.
two unsubs would explain the
One
other.
unsub whose head.
Two unsubs versus one victim. I bet they're the connection to these unsubs.
Calls the unsubs made to the.
They weren't because our unsubs were women.
These unsubs are two women.
Our unsubs are over 30.
Is that the unsub will lead the strike.
Our unsubs may
The
not.
only thing our unsubs have in common.
How do these unsubs meet? Find out how these unsubs got to.
Met the unsub separately.
He could be our unsub.
Easy entry for unsub. The unsub entered.
For one unsub to do it alone. The unsub forces the father, and then the unsub makes the boy.
Possible the unsub.
In some way to the unsub.
He describes the unsub's vehicle
Now we're looking for an unsub.
for the unsub himself.
The unsub may have seen this death as.
Our unsub is likely in his.
Excuse me, our unsub's a weapon of choice.
Why did the unsub kill the?
Which the unsub was privy to.
The unsub knew.
our unsub du jour.
So the unsub
The
operated.
unsub could have drugged him.
But this unsub stitched the.
This unsub's got to think.
The unsub is a.
Way the unsub is using.
This unsub definitely knew.
I thought you said the unsub wasn't.
The way this unsub treats his. I think the unsub's experiment, not the unsub's goal.
This unsub's perform.
The unsub helpfully.
This unsub's supposed to have.
The unsub we're looking for is it so this unsub won't be.
This unsub sent.
Oh, we know the unsub got.
Maybe the unsub, your psychology than this unsub.
How's the unsub controlled? Most like the unsub was selected.
Unsub was following him.
The unsub's hunting grounds dramatically reassess who the unsub is. So the unsub kept
We believe the unsub that we're looking for is.
The unsub is engaged in some.
That's why the unsub disposed of.
The unsub's drugging victim.
If this is our unsub,
Our unsub.
If the unsub's trying to put together.
If our unsub was an inch.
So the unsub.
We still need to figure out how this unsub would.
The unsub might be.
Sounds like our unsub.
Tell if our unsub is
This unsub's just graduated from.
The unsub probably hoped.
That would explain why the unsub.
It's the older unsub.
by the younger unsub. The younger unsub, we believe, is an adult.
We think the older unsub is.
Our older unsub must
And
have.
the younger unsub. But the older unsub just mentored our older unsub.
And the unsub learned his skills. And
The unsub's connected to the victim.
this unsub's incredibly
But
efficient.
the unsub burned him.
We believe that this unknown subject or unsub is trying.
This unsub has a method. The unsub drowned him.
Dealing with more than one unsub.
The unsub used car trouble.
One unsub probably can.
Explains why the unsub's only.
We think these unsub. Maybe the unsub knew.
This unsub sure has a lot of it. So the unsub had the intelligence and this unsub was determined.
To incite the unsub's rage.
Between the unsub and these two victims.
So the unsub knew the best.
If the unsub brought the.
The unsub could have followed.
If he is the unsub, that's not the unsub. He's a.
When the unsub clocked him, and
The unsub in the bar.
the unsub got angry.
The unsub didn't know who he was.
An unsub who suffers.
Likely, the unsub and Barry Flynn.
It's possible the unsub is that the unsub killed them.
Which means the unsub probably.
If the unsub is under the delusion
to match the unsub's expectations.
That this unsub had pores. The unsub's imaginary. The unsub is clear. The unsub didn't pick.
Whole audience full of unsubs. You're really good at talking down an unsub.
Maybe our unsub was a...
So what we know is that we have an unsub with a fan.
The unsub wasn't trying to hide. It's all part of the unsub's fantasy.
Object of our unsub's focus.
If our unsub's using it,
Not only did our unsub use
Yeah, the unsub didn't care. Male unsub who's at least
what the unsub envisioned.
Backed by the unsub.
but before he kills them, our unsub
more in the unsub's past.
escalate as the unsub's drive.
our unsub is
It seems like this unsub's doing something.
Tucker called the unsub today.
The unsub might be on. Maybe the unsub symbol.
This unsub is really, really good.
The controller of the unsub must have been armed.
this unsub is bringing fly.
Unsub is skilled at
The unsub, but he spoke with him. Unsub was trying to make sure.
So the unsub recognizes scenes. The unsub,
So far, the unsub's not trying.
the unsub's in his mid to late 20s.
The profile of our unsub.
The unsub told Brianna
The new wound on the unsub's jaw
Our
was
unsub's wound was self-inflicted.
all of the unsub's killed.
some other purpose to the unsub.
The unsub recently cut himself. Curiously, the unsub seems
But this unsub is killing at a rate.
The unsub kept calling.
So this unsub thinks this unsub is introduced.
When did the unsub start targeting?
That's gonna make the unsub hard to
How did this unsub get her? What did this unsub have known about?
I think I know who the unsub.
Details about the unsub to you.
The unsub would attack you in the unsub's mind.
What if the unsub worked there?
The unsub would take it.
Our unsub could have. This unsub used.
The unsub abducted
The unsub's exsanguinate. So the unsub probably used. So we got an unsub who's.
So the unsub was important to the unsub.
The unsub sold his.
To identify the unsub.
Just one unsub.
The unsub dumped her. So maybe the unsub was on the pro.
And the unsub's use of a plug and the unsub are connected.
He triggered the unsub's violence. The unsub dressed him.
Like only the unsub.
The unsub saw her on.
How or why the unsub changed. The unsub sets the
Most likely, the unsub's.
State causes the unsub to.
The unsub sought out women.
This unsub will not.
Seeing the unsub's profiles.
Unsub is struggling with his faith.
Maybe the unsub suffered.
The unsub went to that camp.
Mitchell either is our unsub or he.
We believe that the unsub is targeted.
This unsub is using his victim.
This unsub is
The
intelligent.
unsub's stalking and murdering. The unsub wasn't stalking us.
Had something on this unsub and he
It was
wanted.
a surprise to the unsub.
Exactly how the unsub entered her house. Technically, the unsub's the one that rescued. In the unsub's mind, their post created a come and don't know what the unsub looks like.
See, the unsub interpreted. The unsub learned about Caliph. Where's the unsub gonna get it?
Thought of a second unsub.
We think our new unsub was in the.
Tell the unsub the truth about it.
This unsub is filled.
Somehow the unsub.
Our unsub didn't know. Our unsub is a highly.
Indicates that this unsub's mo.
Whether it's one unsub or 10, the single unsub.
He was much too young to be the unsub.
The unsub's targeting.
The unsub felt victimized.
We think the unsub is.
This unsub has a
This unsub's either very.
The unsub knew everything that happened. The unsub didn't hear about the cover-up.
And or the unsub is.
Whether the unsub did that?
Well, the unsub knew it was a different.
Suggested the unsub is a fit.
It is. The unsub's a sick.
The unsub wanted to send a message.
The unsub is a woman.
The unsub that we're looking for.
We believe this unsub.
And if the unsub keeps to her schedule,
The unsub was in a hurry.
Same emotional response in the unsub. Any chance that this is the unsub?
You said the unsub's partner. She could be our unsub.
this unsub kills on
The
the...
unsub goes to great lengths to make
The unsub took another nanny.
The unsub return era. That means the unsub probably. We know this unsub used. So the unsub's taller than the. So the unsub's about. If the unsub's 5'7".
important to this unsub. When the unsub knows that.
The unsub would.
And then locks the unsub out.
The unsub have a shot at him. So the unsub wanted both.
The unsub wouldn't change his MO.
Why doesn't this unsub? The unsub doesn't want.
You asked why this unsub doesn't want. We believe that the unsub is a 30 to...
This way to find this unsub is this way to find this unsub is.
When the unsub takes.
Right, so the unsub's using the truck. Just happened to talk to the wrong unsub. That would push the unsub's buttons already.
The unsub.
The unsub who tortured. The unsub targeted us.
Which means the unsub is.
So the unsub's killing for.
Our unsub all.
The unsub wants to increase his body count.
What if we're dealing with two unsubs?
Tip off the real unsub.
Not the unsub. So how would
We were wrong. The unsub does.
the unsub went after?
You may be in danger from the unsub.
The unsub.
This unsub gets off onto the unsub, cut a figure eight. We believe that this unsub is...
If our unsub was trained by
That unsub went dormant. The unsub who used.
the unsub traveled by car, no.
The unsub broke in through a window.
Either way, the unsub participates in the unsub zone of comfort. Is our unsub is killing cheater. Help lead us to our unsub.
We believe that this unknown subject is...
Tells us that the unsub is
Our unsub could have shot his victim.
comfort zone. Our unsub is operating, but this unsub is making the. I think I figured out why our unsub's upset. Take the fact that our unsub think our unsub is obsessed.
Someone did to our unsub. Of our unsub's anger, didn't.
Unsub must have seen that.
that our unsub's been feeding to
The
the...
unsub's rage has probably been brewing.
To make law enforcement believe the unsub's not.
So the unsub had to time it...
So this unsub has a.
We know that the unsub is likely.
The unsub had a specific.
The unsub would want to make sure that.
So the unsub wanted.
Something vital to the unsub.
You know, we may be looking at two unsubs.
From whatever tool the unsub used.
So either the unsub is luck.
Well, it's no accident the unsub chose a victim.
This unsub doesn't leave anything to luck. The unsub let him go.
This escalation could be the unsub's.
And the unsub may also be in those circles.
Tells us that this unsub wants his victim.
The unsub is posting this on the web.
Percy, we think the unsub could.
The unsub uses a garrote.
Which suggests the unsub had...
My unsub is a woman who hates someone else, or the unsub...
If the unsub does feel stripped,
Where the unsub likes to...
Is the unsub targeting...
we might be able to identify the unsub, which
in the unsub psyche.
Feels like the unsub knew we would. The unsub we're looking for is
Is that the unsub is set for...
Unsub appears to be triggered.
This unsub is not only...
This unsub is approaching some.
this unsub isn't stalking the people.
Our unsub is likely...
I know why the unsub targeted Gavin and...
We're missing kids to this unsub.
So it may not be the same unsub.
rebelled against the unsub's program.
Unsub changed its victimology on the unsub's conditioning. It's special meaning to the unsub. Maybe
But if it is the same unsub,
if this is the same unsub, he definitely has... If this is the same unsub, he must be...
The unsub could have overpowered.
We're dealing with the same unsub.
Possible he's the unsub.
Turns out the unsub
The unsub wanted him to.
But the unsub's got...
The unsub found their location of the unsub's or age.
maybe she's the unsub's mother. Maybe the unsub's mother
The
committed...
unsub could have easily...
Gotta be our unsub.
Are we sure that it's the same unsub?
Well, the unsub's got to be physically.
Well, the unsub...
One of those people may be the unsub, so...
The unsub was probably...
I think the unsub may have stolen... The unsub may have been a victim.
The unsub alternated between.
Sounds like two unsubs.
This unsub is controlled and
The unsub would have to have...
This unsub wants to show his...
Key to finding this unsub is. Now, that could be how the unsub crossed. But if the unsub's good with computer, the unsub didn't erase the.
And the unsub figured out a way to use it.
Maybe the unsub wrote that...
The unsub didn't write it.
Two unsubs would explain it.
The unsub must have bought this and she...
You know, the description of our unsub is the unsub might be a disgruntled...
She interacted with the unsub.
the unsub was described.
Matches the description of the unsub. It's our unsub.
I am chasing an unsub. Who did your unsub kill?
That's why the unsub chose her.
Does it match this unsub's MO?
Unsub's desires.
Part of the female unsub. It's possible this unsub's a sadist. The unsub has a type.
The unsub had to know that someone would.
It's possible the unsub wrote.
The unsub's growing bolder.
The unsub could be devolved.
So did the unsub kill them
So if the unsub knew about it coming...
Could have triggered the unsub's raid.
from the unsub?
The unsub must...
Lengths to which the unsub goes.
Property the unsub might
The
be.
unsub's evolving.
Our unsub clearly employs...
Our unsub parks his vehicle.
The unsubs would have had to stay...
Do you think one of the unsubs is a woman?
Our unsubs are getting bold.
In the dominant unsub's fantasies.
The unsub's physicality.
Or the unsub's physicality.
The unsub...
The unsub was hunting them.
In order to find this unsub, we're going.
This isn't one unsub then.
And the unsub gets him back by hanging.
Where the unsub or unsubs are getting this barb. The unsub wants the families to think that
The unsub's a family man.
they were describing the unsub.
The unsub must have come for her.
The unsub attacked Debbie first.
The unsub wears a pig mask.
So does this unsub just...
The unsub seems not to have an age or.
The unsub went to great lengths to...
And the unsub could be working off some.
So the unsub wanted... The unsub didn't have the physical strength.
Our unsub just might be female.
This unknown subject is an its. We believe this unsub may also be a woman.
The unsub is exhibiting a level of...
This means the unsub's next target...
The unsub perceives as having played...
magnified in the unsub psyche.
The unsub could be angry about... The unsub could be angry about...
Could be looking at a female unsub.
The unsub's punishing them for their...
How the unsub got him.
The unsub may have spiked his...
The unsub slipped in the arm.
Theory of an unsub punishing people.
The bartender said the unsub may...
The unsub was denied what he
The
wanted.
unsub's hunting ground.
He's at a...
But the unsub may have...
This unsub was also... The unsub may be a part... The unsub must be just out of camp.
Profiled the unsub.
The unsub himself.
The same unsub killed...
Friend of the unsubs.
It's not about rape for this unsub. It's
The unsub's M.O.
We believe the unsub we're looking for.
This unsub is low-key.
Which means the unsub probably...
We profiled that this unsub would be submitted.
which tells us that this unsub's message...
Unsubs insert themselves in... This unsub is...
He's not our unsub. So it wasn't a team of unsubs, but one.
You said the unsub wanted us.
The unsub chose Mills and still lead us to the unsub.
That means the unsub suck.
The unsub grew up around dead bodies.
Everything in the unsub's behavior...
Myers isn't the unsub, he's the first.
The real unsub killed...
Myers stood in the way of the unsub's true
The
object.
unsub's just experimenting.
The unsub's moving quickly.
The unsub forcibly submerged.
Maybe our unsub has some...
Our unsub probably followed him.
The unsub is extremely...
This unsub truly evokes which might fit our unsub's MO.
This unsub's recreating...
We believe the unsub we're looking for.
Our unsub killed all...
Consequently, we believe our unsub is met...
An unsub this committed to a body of.
We catch our unsub.
This unsub and his got some relationship with the unsub.
What, this unsub just... Not to say that the unsub isn't...
So we don't drive this unsub under. The unsub didn't choose this flight.
The unsub will poke his head out.
The unsub wants to witness it.
There is no unsub to witness.
The unsub's organization. Kicking when the unsub helped.
But the unsub cut him loose. The unsub wants his victim irritant. The unsub introduced...
Our unsub didn't hold him. Oh, the unsub wants this guy to eat.
Torture for the unsub. I think it's
Believe the unsub we're looking for.
Believe it or not, this unsub...
So the unsub changed tack.
important that we do not label this unsub as crazy.
This unsub has searched high.
Who this unsub is.
Says the unsub had dead...
Can't do the same thing to that unsub.
Or unsubs. Belongs to a single unsub.
So it's a single unsub.
The unsub's victim selection.
How did the unsub...
The unsub took a big... The unsub was wearing these.
I think the unsub might be...
The unsub we're looking for.
The unsub feels her own. Also indicate that the unsub feels her...
Offered by the unsub herself. She...
Symbolize the unsub's
Maybe the unsub stole it. Our unsub sees herself as... Our unsub obviously feels...
means the unsub's probably...
The unsub believed in the
The
fair.
unsub is evolving. This is as if the unsub...
Obviously, the unsub just... The dress that the unsub wore...
when the unsub stabbed here.
Maybe the unsub's recreating it. The unsub only has to look
Exactly what the unsub wants.
Maybe the unsub had a misconception. Maybe the unsub was a trap.
Unsub's looking for attention.
How did the unsub know?
Sent an evite to the unsub.
The unsub punctured the victim.
So did the unsub think the unsub could be letting his...
So the unsub's putting
The unsub must have scholarly.
The unsub is targeting that.
The unsub's trying to make a name.
Unsub clearly has a type. He's
The
making...
unsub probably knew that.
We put this unsub in his lake.
The unsub assumes the man...
This unsub probably lacked. This unsub sees himself.
This one of them is our unsub. This unsub's killed.
This unsub's found as well.
Apparently the unsub didn't.
This unsub could be a teenager.
We think the unsub decided...
Someone else besides the unsub was... Our unsubs are now in their...
The unsubs are either former...
The unsubs are also victims.
One, if not both of the unsubs are...
The potential unsubs just keep...
Must have been the unsub's trick.
Our unsubs will be on that.
We have our two unsubs.
Maybe the unsub's a customer.
The unsub got into the salon.
The unsub's...
So the unsub took the clothes...
Unsub gets high on the...
The unsub's in bold and
Or our unsub's the
component to the unsub selection criteria.
Maybe our unsub... So our unsub's highly skilled.
If the unsub were a fit guy, so the unsub cleaned them.
Our unsub's a woman.
Industry. Maybe our unsub interface.
The unsub washed the victim's clothes. It's possible our unsub was...
Possibly be our unsubs. Maybe the unsub's losing it.
At least our unsubs can...
Sounds like the unsub had a...
What if the unsub's pulling her?
We believe the unsub we're looking for.
The unsub lets her ankle knew the unsub. This unsub is disordered.
This could mean that this unsub is...
Surprise the unsub. Who...
Be the unsub's bloody shoe. Witness. The unsub could have...
Which means the unsub was standing.
So it had to be the unsub.
What if the unsub used to live?
The unsub either... He's got to be our unsub.
We sure this is the unsub?
This unsub went through a lot of trouble.
What if what the unsub is doing is like...
It isn't the unsub. No, this unsub is replicating.
The unsub isn't anyone we talk.
The unsub's watching.
So the unsub happened to...
Well, whatever the reason, this unsub's killed.
If the unsub did... So far, the unsub stayed...
The unsub must have known about this.
weren't shot until the unsub made...
When the unsub got inside, he accelerated the unsub's kills.
on the unsub's hunting ground.
Which means the unsub isn't dispersing. You know, if the unsub needs the organ...
How did the unsub manage it?
Focus again on how the unsub...
There is an unsub box that has...
I'm the unsub.
The unsub was strangling...
Birds were the unsub's upset.
The unsub into it.
Since the unsub identified places where the unsub was hunted.
That's how the unsub knew.
Sure, he got the unsub's attention.
Sat right here to let the unsub know he's...
It's like the unsub was his white move is when the unsub targeted.
The same as the unsub is A.
And this unknown subject.
It's what the unsub left in there.
So the unsub really knew his...
The unsub and his victim.
The unsub wants everyone
In
looking.
the unsub's testing ground. So the unsub may not...
The unsub's motive may not be to...
plan, and this unsub's learning.
If the unsub sees...
The unsub's certain...
Second unsub.
An unsub who said T gave the unsub the urge to kill again. It's possible the unsub knew.
The unsub could be a lonely heart skill.
The unsub had another trust.
The unsub didn't have to...
The unsub either lives or what type of unsub typically thrives.
This unsub could be...
Occurred when the unsub didn't have any. This is the first time that the unsub broke.
This unsub is a...
Why we believe the unsub's mother...
Indicate that the unsub feels conflict.
Typically unsubs with this.
The unsub most likely...
Why we're probably looking at multiple unsubs.
Multiple unsubs in the prisons.
And it says here that the unsub's not in... Maybe the unsub used a ruse.
Phone contact with the unsub.
Targeted by the unsub.
I think she knew the unsub was coming.
We believe the unsub and...
The unsub uses this role play to get...
This has provided the unsub with a...
This unsub's MO takes
The
patience.
unsub's fetish there for the unsub's recruitment.
The birth of the unsub's own children.
If the unsub's trigger...
Unsubs eluded both don't.
And the unsub's probably too cares.
For unsub 6 was
I
passed.
think the unsub infiltrated this. The unsub is going to see it as a...
But no sign of the unsub in...
There's no way the unsub planned any of that.
And confirm that the unsub external...
What we've learned about unsubs on foreign.
This unsub isn't old enough.
If Tidwell's the unsub, is there a connection?
The unsub may have been trying to
It's for the unsub's own gratification. The unsub finally just...
He's an unsub. He's...
How this unsub is able to make... How the unsub was able to make the victims...
The unsub uses the first...
So the unsub hasn't recalled...
We're sure this is the same unsub?
Wasn't the unsub. What if the unsub tried to get...
This unsub committed 4...
What does that mean for the unsub?
How would the unsub know that?
In doing so, they ruin the unsub's life. I want to see if the unsub...
Someone out there that may have seen the unsub.
Unsub runs up on her.
To the unsub's level of A. This unsub would have an intimate knowledge...
Bonded with the unsub. If the unsub wasn't this unsub's group. What's our unknown subjects?
The unsub definitely left it.
To the same unsub?
It's a vendetta by the unsub and not a...
So if the unsub sustained...
The unsub that we're looking... hired the unsub over the...
This unsub suffered...
To match the unsub to his claim.
Dummy corporation the unsub uses for...
The unsub charges for...
Walk us through it like you're the unsub.
The unsub left 5 minutes.
Box the unsub in.
We profiled that the unsub would have... The unsub could have left all...
The unsub bought it from him and...
The unsub is more sarin.
The fact that the unsub chose...
The longer this unsub remains...
Then the unsub killed him.
The unsub doesn't care about hiding.
From the unsub's point of view...
Be the unsub's way of torture. The unsub could be thinking the unsub.
So maybe our unsub likes it's not our unsub. And the unsub crossed paths. Reed thinks that our unsub...
The unsub could have figured it.
The unsub's taking away.
The unsub's commenting on...
We believe the unknown subject we're looking for... What if the unsub didn't...
Probable way that the unsub could come...
Tell you about this unsub. This unsub is engaged.
The unsubs might have...
But unsub's this violent. How do you...
The unsub separate...
The unsubs are probably from some...
Direction of the unsub himself.
We think the unsub might have his home base...
Could still be our unsub.
Morpheus is the unsub. Has always been the unsub. This unsub needs to comply.
What if the unsub's shown is
Well,
true?
the unsub is not from here.
The unsub would have known.
That could be our unsub.
Could be an unsub. We need to...
Two separate unsubs.
The unsub likely walked. The
unsub has
The unsub's found an outlet for
To cross the unsub now.
Revenge is the unsub's
the unsub's confidence.
Maybe the unsub's motivation. The unsub could be using
That speaks to the unsub's
Means
knowledge.
the unsub's hunting ground, maybe.
the unsub is stepping up.
That is something that affected the unsub. This unsub wanted Stephen to...
The unsub didn't abduct. The unsub must have.
The unsub lies in wait.
Lance gave the unsub what he wanted. He died before the unsub was finished with it.
The unknown subject we're looking for.
The unsub gets. This unsub exerts power. It's possible the unsub is.
Personal reason for what the unsub is doing.
We believe this unsub is
This unsub is driven by the unsub what he ultimately wants.
Any place where the unsub is crossed with the unsub. This must. Whatever that unsub is
The
looking.
unsub is riddled with... So the unsub had special... Well, that means the unsub's fed. Looks like the unsub is getting off.
means the unsub's given up. The unsub could be a member, aware of the unsub's predilection, a face for the unsub.
Maybe he knew the unsub personally.
Means the unsub had the VIX for...
Could encourage the unsub, or
This unsub did his homework.
And the unsub could be getting ready to.
The unsub might be unraveling.
This could be the unsub playing God.
are at work in this unsub. Unless the unsub's having it, maybe the unsub's looking beyond neurology.
The unsub could have gotten the unsub main.
most dangerous and elusive unsubs. Unsub must have used a...
And how did the unsub cross?
The unsub couldn't have picked him.
The unsub most likely...
The unsub obviously has a...
The unsub would need a...
The unsub could have followed her.
Could be with the unsub.
Now, the unsub's most important to the unsub.
If the unsub's not
The
having...
unsub we're looking for. How the unsub's only been abducted.
What if the unsub knew about what he...
The unsub while he's dry. The unsub's offended by immorality. The unsub's hunting ground. If the unsub went to alternate, finding this unsub is going to
Or
be...
the unsub could have snapped.
Yeah, these types of unsubs typically...
Because the unsub passed.
Maybe the unsub's familiar.
Considered the unsub might have...
When an unsub is in there...
The unsub didn't take her. Yeah, the unsub is working.
We believe the unsub were...
The unsub is a child when they.
The unsub is working off...
The victims is the unsub himself.
That the unsub may be working.
And the unsub being removed from...
Unless she's with the unsub.
Sketch of the unsub.
Hit on our unsub.
Well, it doesn't appear the unsub has it.
The unsub was into that.
So what's driving our unsub? A candidate who could be our unsub?
The unsub has lived
The unsub took a serious.
on the unsub's neck.
The unsub, most likely the unsub's antisocial had to be the unsub. He must have... Anyone matching the unsub's pro, probably what the unsub's driving.
Is it the same unsubs? This is a well-organized unsub.
The unsub probably parked...
This blood is the unsub's. The unsub did it to block the. Why did the unsub let Lila?
Nothing from the unsub. Or it could have been the unsub, so if that was our unsub. Glue our unsub uses.
But this unsub prolonged...
Target of the unsub's rage. And the unsub's child did what he felt.
This may discourage this unsub. Or the unsub did a much better...
The unsub spends an hour.
Connect our unsub to the center. The unsub's careful. I wonder what the unsub... Well, the unsub must have thought she...
That the unsub made was actually...
That means the unsub's plan all along.
11 hours to give this unsub what he did.
The unsub is a fox.
If this is the same unsub, he would be pattern the unsub. Only
The unsub barely knew her.
this unsub's out of control. If the unsub has this unsub group in an area near a high profile...
The unsub's knife.
The unsub redressed her.
At least the unsub draws less attention. This unsub is going. Our unsub will do the same.
Or the unsub injected her himself. The unsub did it. That's why it looked like the unsub was using...
We believe the unsub we're looking for...
Death isn't the goal for this unsub.
This unsub psychology.
Rose had a personal connection with this unsub.
And rejected the unsub.
It looks like the unsub...
Let's think about the unsub.
Term relationship with the unsub. If you. So the unsub we're looking for.
So the unsub staged it.
If the unsub did it would be...
Things that the unsub is
The
most...
unsub's gonna kill those kids.
What if that's where the unsub is?
The unsub's on his way to Kentucky.
What if the unsub is someone for.
We're sent to the unsub in...
Significance to the unsub, it's likely he would...
Focus on unsubs that are...
The unsub is...
And the unsub probably...
The unsub is converged.
Definitely not our unsub.
The unsub.
Like this may be the unsub's form.
Me is how the unsub...
We could be looking at two unsubs.
The unsub had to overcome a lot.
This unsub is just. If the unsub was raised.
The unsub.
The unsub was able to keep...
So the unsub's disposed.
Well, if the unsub took girls, so we said the unsub may...
Probably the unsub's way of exerting.
What if the unsub is deliberate?
Why would the unsub suddenly
I
start...
remember seeing that unsub.
The unsub in custody did...
We got our unsub.
Lewis and Alves apprehended the unsub.
The unsub must make them.
Todd's little brother is our unsub. If the unsub expected to wipe...
Whatever set this unsub off...
The unsub shot her. So the unsub runs into the unsub. Seems this unsub.
The unsub wanted to wipe out...
The unsub must have known the unsub wants to hurt.
We believe the unsub is a very...
Driving this unsub.
Allows the unsub to satisfy.
Wrong, the unsub.
Would not deter this unsub.
If the unsub is the point for our unsub.
Our unsub could be a...
From the unsub's point of
The
view,
rage our unsub has.
The unsub left the homes undisturbed.
Our unsub isn't an adult.
The unsub's feeling of power.
The unsub may be one...
It's our unsub.
if the unsub would
Is our unsub.
Gives the unsub a massive...
Really isn't our unsub. We're just brought in as an unsub.
But our unsub got a hold...
deprogram the unsub safely.
Say our unsub's got a type.
The unsub's probably using...
What the unsub would want.
That means something to the unsub.
This unsub didn't wait through. The unsub must know where...
Whereas our unsub... Maybe our unsub's a member...
Our unsub is one of the faithful.
And lost the unsub. I'm having dinner with the unsub. And the unsub's likely using...
Only the unsubs waited.
Maybe the unsubs were...
The unsubs were headed east. Or the unsubs got...
Unsubs killed before.
The unsub broke into them. Maybe the unsubs, it's critical to our unsub's ritual that
Well, that's definitely the work of our unsub.
And
Why does the unsub move?
We have just found our unsub's hunting ground. Is how this unsub chooses.
it's possible the unsub is making...
This could explain why the unsub
So the unsub may believe that...
Profile about the unsub making a statement.
profile of the unsub doesn't apply to
I think our unsub is trying
aspect of the unsub's ritual.
We profile the unsub in that.
between the unsub and the victim.
or the unsub was skilled enough to...
The unsub was interrupted.
The unsub couldn't have known
The unsub did something
That the unsub is transported. The unsub was really the way the unsub had been, or the unsub.
This unsub...
Causing the unsub to escalate.
still enraged the unsub.
The unsub could have freaked out.
An unsub turning cars into who the unsub's intended victims are. Unsub's inflicted nothing. So what does the unsub want?
Well, if the unsub likes to watch everything about this unsub.
Our unsub's found a new wire.
All right, well, this unsub's
This unsub,
extremely important to this unsub.
we believe our unsub,
This unsub is careful.
for someone the unsub seeks.
Unsub may lack the confidence.
If the unsub can't watch. Between the unsub and Veronica. If the unsub needed it.
Specified owner is our unsub. This unsub has no gender or
The unsub didn't stick around.
Been freezing on the unsub. It's hard to tell if the unsub is met.
multiple unsubs or the act.
The unsub could have access.
So this unsub could have made his own.
To match the unsub, we
Possible the unsub knew.
the unsub could have a connection.
Looks like the same unsub is... But the unsub might have...
The unsub targeted.
So maybe this unsub sees... Maybe the unsub feels this unsub wants to do more. This unsub has feelings of entitlement, one step ahead of this unsub. Why did the unsub target her?
What if George is our unsub?
Unsub wants to stop people from having sex. It's like we have two unsubs.
Two unsubs in it between our two unsubs. So the Woods unsub... The Woods unsub start... First time the home invasion unsubs. What each one tells us about each unsub.
I speak to this unsub's motive.
Unsub's prints, there would be two unsubs. That means the unsub must have... So we've got an unsub who killed... Based on the unsub's injury, the unsub's been so...
The unsub realized he'd been killing.
The unsub's gotta be linked to these... All of the houses the unsub's...
Said the unsub looked like he was.
Fits our unsub's timeline.
Must be the unsub.
We chased down the unsub.
This unsub's got a ritualistic behavior.
Put them on the unsub's radar.
Our unsub isn't just killing. Set the unsub off.
One more salt in the unsub's wound.
Our unsub isn't in.
Maybe the unsub's disapproving.
So why did the unsub shift from?
The unsub starts choosing.
The unsub is using it more in the film.
The unsub's approaching his endgame.
Why does the unsub take Bob?
What if the unsub was...
Unsub doesn't appear to have a gender preference. Our unsub has a beef with the federal.
Oh, and speaking of our unsub...
We're dealing with an unsub. This leads us to believe that this unsub is...
This unsub falls into one.
This would be an unsub similar, or this could be an unsub with a person.
This unsub shares characteristics.
At this point, the unsub has.
So it's our unsub. Strangers to the unsub is.
She's definitely our unsub. Our unsub is Sarah McLean.
On our unsub, she's...
Jack murdered the unsub in front of me.
The unsub simply wanted her dead.
Our unsub is strong. It might belong to the unsub. To see if anybody that fits the unsub's
This
profile.
unsub...
Our unsub was a child.
Our unsub was abandoned. These...
Intersecting with the unsub. How are they intersecting with the unsub?
Oh, this was the unsub's first kill.
How did her and the unsub meet? Circles tightening around the unsub's prime.
Our unsub might actually be in love with...
But his unsub credentials are like...
Xenophobic resentment on the part of the unsub.
Sounds like an unsub with an unsub must have used an.
Either our unsub is one hell of a marksman.
If the unsub wanted to go out into...
There's one or two unsubs. The unsub would have needed to know. Not like the unsub walked from a different location by our unsub.
Tell us more about the unsub who's controlling.
We're dealing with a lone unsub.
This unsub does not
As a result, we believe this unsub may... This unsub seems to have a kill.
will be the key to identifying the unsub.
The unsub will continue working his way down the...
No connection to the unsub. If our unsub is a former...
He's our unsub. This unsub has murdered... She didn't get the unsub's name?
Couldn't have been the unsub who wanted the unsub dead.
What could be the unsub stressor?
Murder in the unsub was only half.
This unsub is anything...
So whoever this unsub is, unsub's first kill. Current unsub was operating. So he trains a new unsub to...
Stands to reason this new unsub's...
The unsub's preferred hunting ground.
The unsub could be holding.
No, the unsub could hold a...
The unsub would need it.
The unsub put this on her windshield.
So if this is the same unsub...
Years ago, the unsub takes...
Inside the unsub's
The body suggests the unsub cared. You think the unsub stayed...
The unsub struck again.
The unsub lost the doctors.
Timing of the unsub's abduct. Our unsub's counting up. I think the unsub's abducted.
Part of the unsub's...
The unsub's probably been...
Unsub left a white...
Except our unsub wants these...
Which means our unsub's only gain. Given the time the unsub took to...
So does the unsub use his Vic gave the unsub access?
The unsub would need to have the anti...
The unsub's ruse is to... They overlap in the unsub's mind. It's possible our unsub may...
So this wasn't our unsub's first time.
Which suggests our unsub is... Our unsub's anger could be directed...
With the additional data from the unsubs, they're able to close in on the unsub's comforts.
And whose attention our unsub is after.
She was parked when the unsub came up.
And the unsub could be escorting the unsub's on a spree.
The unsub wouldn't... So the unsub placed them. Why is the unsub hiding? Naming the unsub is...
Gonna make the unsub take big...
Thought the media might be stoking our unsub. We have to think of this unsub in two...
This unsub is obsessed.
Why did the unsub target Caleb?
So you've got nothing on the unsub's ID.
If the unsub is focused on them, he must have.
But we know the unsub's comfort zone. They're inside the unsub's hunting grounds.
Maybe the unsub's a dad.
Inside the unsub's comfort zone?
That is our unsub. The unknown subject we're looking for is that the unsub knew his victim.
Unsubs like to insert them.
How did the unsub get in?
I am seeing is an unsub who covered. Well, that means the unsub's no master. If the unsub found this in his secret.
Points us to the unsub.
Am I your unsub? Doug is our unsub. The unsub we've been looking for is straight up burglary. The unsub would have made.
Unsub wanted these occupants dead.
I mean, the unsub must have had some. Yeah, this unsub doesn't strike me as.
Well, the unsub could have trashed when the unsub crashed apart.
The unsub only took one.
Our unsub had too much.
The unsub grabbed the first thing he saw.
The unsub goes through all the. The unsub wanted these coins to.
There's a disconnect with this unsub.
Unsub triggers go, that's all.
This unsub will strike again within the next 24.
The unsub didn't need a cinder block. Unsub took it from inside. So the unsub sewed him up.
The unsub appears to be. I think I know why the unsub is choosing.
Hopefully, the unsub's unaware.
Profile of the unsub was stuck in.
Peter's not our unsub.
Aims to piss off the unsub.
Gotta be the unsubs.
She unknowingly told the unsub.
Or give our unsub exactly.
So the unsub must have followed.
I'd say the unsub's a moral enforcer. The unsub may view part.
The unsub's kill zone is literally. The unsub may be suffering from some. Our unsub thinks he's a werewolf. After the unsub discarded it as an interaction with the unsub.
This unsub is showing no. The unsub placed his coat.
The unsub we're looking for is
Our unsub might be facing him.
The unsub may have suffered.
Which means the unsub's human side may.
Unsub could have taken it.
The unsub's rage, a white.
When the unsub put his coat.
The unsub could have witnessed. The unsub used Mr. Hirota's blood.
And if the unsub feels the unsub's choice of weapon.
Unsub appears to be used. We're dealing with a single unsub.
This unsub will remain in the
Our
shadow.
unsub struck again last. So the unsub's first two victims were.
The unsub probably disabled. So the unsub isn't just.
Maybe our unsub's male victim.
Part of the unsub's plan B. Our unsub's first cipher.
I don't see a ninja like unsub.
Theory would explain our unsub's behavior.
Crack the unsub's last cipher.
Our unsub's debut cipher, which.
More than that, the unsub sincerely.
Could be the reason our unsub crossed.
Expect an unsub like this.
Unsub was confident he wouldn't be caught.
Kate, the unsub used some kind
The
of.
unsub is skilled with.
The unsub would even need to.
This unsub has been back.
Carl's a big guy. The unsub must have gotten a dose.
Looks like our unsub's been living out. Unsub's been holding his victims. Us that this unsub believes.
Our unsub wants to eradicate our unsub's fixation.
Our unsub was living.
The unsub scrubbed the van that the unsub lost someone.
For our unsub. We thought our unsub was on a mission connecting our unsub to the first. So our unsub started. That's when the medication in the unsub's van. That's the unsub stressor.
If the unsub is now directing his anger.
See, the unsub left a knife. Were there any?
Our unsub corralled all four of the unsubs an insider who
on
wanted.
the part of the unsub.
Maybe their rejection of the unsubs.
What if the unsub played at the op?
Two male unsubs. So half of the country's going to be rooting for the unsubs.
The unsub is targeting elderly.
That she's our unsub's next victim.
Or we don't catch this unsub. Go right, and we do catch our unsub. The women were comfortable with the unsub.
The unsub's pattern holds.
Well, if that's the case, the unsub could be a person with.
Like the one the unsub dresses. So Tracy Ferguson could be our unsub's first. Tracy was this unsub's first victim. Mayhew is our unsub's newest victim.
That's our unsub.
Allowed us to identify this unsub.
The unsub we're.
Maybe the unsub wore a disguise. Unsub's hitting secluded house. The unsub didn't start out looking for blood. Mentality fits our unsub's profile.
Looks like the unsub's moving.
This unsub must have an unsub. When unsubs wear masks.
But the unsubs got scared off.
So you said the unsub was. The unsub could be connected to the unsub. Probably brings a gun to help.
So the unsub handled it.
Maybe the unsub brought it with him. I'm thinking the unsub probably. They could be the unsub's vice.
The unsub might be romantic.
Is supremely important to this unsub.
How is the unsub meeting? That has to be the window our unsub.
The unsub's growing his own rose.
So our unsub lives.
Songs to be an unsub by, which
There's at least two unsubs, maybe three. And a hell of a job insulating these unsubs.
And the unsub's never seen.
So one of the unsubs.
So if our unsubs have been cold.
I mean, the unsub could have weaponized. Our unsub wants his victim.
This unsub's rather unsophisticated.
Leans towards the unsub being a male.
The unsub must have stopped.
The unsub would have needed. The unsub we're looking for is hoping.
Maybe the unsub was struggling to stay afloat. The unsub applied for a new loan, even if it only makes sense to the unsub.
The unsub was in complete control. Stacy's husband said that the unsub
The night when the unsub followed her.
The unsub discovered that
The ME did say the unsub was targeting.
To re-examine our unsubs earlier.
Now this unsub will not.
Our unsub believes the hum is housed. This place drove the unsub mad.
And our unsub thinks that it is.
And our unsub's anger. If you.
We believe our unsub is trying to look. Could be where the unsub's headed to next. It looks like the unsub used this. Well, if the unsub thought. So we know for a fact that our unsub is male.
So you're saying maybe the unsub couldn't hear. Caleb's our unsub.
Our unsub shut the power down. Convinced it was an unsub. We.
Naming the unsub, that's exactly.
The unsub knows we have to take.
So did the unsub think he.
the unsub's hunting grounds.
And unsub 101 and sir.
Unsub 101. We've got an active unsub. Our unsub has to be.
Well, the unsub wouldn't go far from
This unsub felt the...
I'd say our unsub is...
Just how well our unsub wrapped these...
Our unsub wasn't shy about it.
And the unsub apparently made his get.
It's also about the unsub's need to catch.
We believe our unknown subject is...
We believe our unsub is being driven by
This unsub believes that our unsub is...
crowning of celebrity offers our unsub. Why did our unsub...
Could be how the unsub got... So the unsub walked right.
No, this is definitely the work of our unsub.
The unsub believes he is without...
Whatever the message, it's definitely our unsub.
Well, there's a good case for both of them as our unsub.
You are not responsible for the unsub's behavior.
Danny's not our unsub.
So our unsub spit into a tube?
We have two theories about the unsub. One,
Before the unsub got to her.
Somehow, the unsub meant the jewelry the unsub gave back.
unsub's older.
The unsub gives the girl...
If this unsub was in the unsub, but she knew the unsub, and that the unsub would never come.
So consider that our unsub might not be...
Well, if our unsub's a hitman...
It appears as though the unsub is still... Weird as the unsub used bleach.
Confirms that our unsub is Jeremy Grant.
What does our unsub want? And then the unsub.
The unsub's in complete control.
It's almost like the unsub was...
Did the unsub pick them because...
And if so, what is the unsub's connection to?
Right now, the unsub's banking on them.
Our unsub is coming from wealthy neighborhoods.
Our unsub is on a spree.
Desire for this unsub to be...
Our unsub was...
Description of our unsub approach.
So our unsub grabs...
The movements of this unsub.
Our unsub grabs Cass.
Our unsub's anger is...
Our unsubs took a big...
We think the unsub is...
If our unsub stick...
to save Naomi and capture the unsub.
For our unsub. So maybe the unsub's job...
The unsub might have...
If the unsub sees this, he'll do... But that wouldn't matter to our unsub. He'd hold...
The unsub stalks his victim.
And assuming we have an unsub...
Possible signature for our unsub.
If you're an unsub...
And if the unsub followed pattern, definitely our unsub.
It's looking more and more like our unsub.
He is not our unsub.
I think Clay wrote about the unsub in his...
Or could be our unsub. But the unsub's use of modified opiates...
That our unsub has any search.
Yeah, our unsub is acting...
This is our unsub's twist. Something tells me this unsub is far...
Our unsub's expected someone to find...
So our unsub seemed fairly well...
You mean multiple female unsubs? Probability of just one unsub. Our unknown subject, A.K.
This unsub is what we...
Either the unsub surprised them in bed...
Games this unsub's playing. This has got to be the same unsub.
Let's hope we find this unsub before... So our unsub had a wait. Well, the unsub cut the power.
Well, the unsub secured them.
Our unsub's a hunter.
Based on the video, the unsub's goggles...
The unsub moved them to a... Well, maybe this unsub did it.
The unsub we're looking for is believed to be...
That this unsub has learned to...
However, this unsub is limited social.
If the unsub is one of his dad's patients...
This file might be our unsub.
The unsub's parents might have decided to...
If this exposure therapy was the unsub's stressor...
They went to the unsub volunteers. The unsub would need to know that the children... This unsub isn't grabbing.
Unsub's sending a message.
Making it even more likely that the unsub would pre...
Our unsub used the expression, our unsub's anger is...
I believe the unsub is in his mid-30s.
This unsub is demonstrated to us.
I think the unsub will be discouraged.
This had to have been our unsub.
So the unsub got an X.
This unsub's anger is...
About as unsubby as they come.
Okay, so the unsub cherry-picked...
Nobody matches the unsub's profile.
Drug that our unsub was using. Yeah, but it also means our unsub is a lot...
Might be the unsub's subliminal message. The unsub must see himself as a...
How did the unsub set the fire?
The unsub could have used sulfuric acid.
So, the unsub was either someone she knew...
Most unsubs have a love-hate relationship the unsub finds most attractive.
The unsub was somebody Monica...
You know, it could be an unsub who targets a...
The unsub was creating a...
The unsub opened a...
See if they recognize our unsub. The unsub we're dealing...
Our unsub has a damage...
We drilled down on the unsub's back.
Part of the unsub story is true.
The mother's lifelong neglect towards the unsub.
It was the unsub's mother.
We think our unsub's next target...
The unsub's mother made a phone.
This unsub not only has the... Our unsub has shown a high...
Two, it's the unsub's compulsion. You can't get...
It's like the unsub ran pre...
Our unsub must also be...
The perfect unsub.
So we know the unsub's clinic. The unsub used the tip...
The unsub might have...
Because the unsub had a disarm
The
camp.
unsub got the jump on...
The unsub's ability to...
The unsub's evolving.
Or did the unsub?
All inside the unsub's comfort zone.
We assume the unsub's a man, but...
We think the unsub left it.
So the unsub kills her, know what the unsub's doing.
This unsub is mission-driven.
The unsub might be targeting you right in the unsub's comfort zone.
Well, the unsub must have been stalked.
The unsub could have killed him.
Well, the unsub would need to gain...
So the unsub kills his wife.
Everything about what the unsub...
So the unsub is a proxy.
As our unsub knew he would.
The victims are unsub targeted.
They've all crossed paths with the unsub.
Our unsub's name is Casey.
Our unsub's got to be familiar with... Could be a new unsub. And some other unsub.
And the unsub's using the credit card to...
This doesn't feel like an unsub. We're presented with an unsub that demonstrates
The motivations of a very different unsub.
this new unsub that I've refused all the boxes for a potential unsub.
Our unsub is Dr. Hurst.
About everything. Lynch wasn't our unsub. What I'm worried about is a pissed-off unsub.
The unsub put them on just to make...
The unsub wanted them all dead.
So we're definitely dealing with one unsub.
You've angered our unsub. Where our unsub will strike next.
I think the unsub lives in a different part of the country.
Our unsub's back in the saddle.
Who were attacked by our unsub.
Along the way, they encountered the unsub.
So the unsub dressed him up to resemble a woman.
The unsub's goal all this time has been to...
The unsub posed as a doctor to lure.
Profile's too old to be our unsub, though.
This unsub's victimology is...
So for some reason, this unsub feels the need...
Except it seems like this unsub merged Philip.
If that's true and this unsub continues to...
The unsub fired the shots from over there. If the unsub tried that here.
Then the unsub we're looking at is actually... This unsub has no interest in seeing... very well mean multiple unsubs. It should typically mean the unsubs have some sort of...
The unsub's rage here.
He may be our unsub's ultimate target.
Any idea on the victims are unsub?
No, only the unsub's demand.
The unsub leave these behind?
We ID'd the unsub.
The unsub's not afraid of being seen. We should take the base on the unsub's behavior. He'd know.
The unsub probably wasn't stalking him.
Our unsub didn't drug Sean.
The unsub must have pressed it in.
That's why the unsub is targeting him. Does our unsub think he...
Something the unsub needs to do.
Particular delusion that this unsub is experiencing.
Our unsub's psychosis is...
This unsub is a man living in... We don't know what sparked our unsub.
The unsub, likely caused by the unsub himself.
So unable to face reality, our unsub.
Our unsub's the father here.
Our unsub might be one.
Victim Sean and our unsub.
Brenda knows our unsub and...
If this unsub's targeting two distinct the unsub drug, then they might...
She saw the unsub with...
Or there's some confusion in the unsub's mind. This unsub's taking feeling...
Isn't part of the unsub's victim.
Looks like this unsub is
And the unsub keeps referring...
Unsub's punishing it.
What if the unsub sees the unknown subject we're looking...
This unsub is targeting
The unsub is trying to...
We think our unsub is...
It's our unsub?
Father of our unsub.
the unsub in effect.
On the one hand, the unsub was...
The last time I chased an unsub through...
You never really let the unsub. I'm the unsub.
Forget the unsub. What do you want?
I'm the unsub.
I'm the unsub.